Throughout the conference, we've heard many influential leaders who've shared their wisdom, experience, towards their path to peak performance and leadership. However, we all know this, right, ladies? Along the way, well, life happens. Crap hits the fan, potholes, speed bumps, a few speeding violations here lately. And, and although we want so much to run everything so smoothly and so perfectly, you know, something that Abhi Krishna said yesterday that actually really resonated with me was that let's be comfortable with being perfectly imperfect. So I'd like you to know that there are 4 amazing women sharing the stage with me today, and they're going to be sharing their leadership journey with you. So let's have them tell us that. And Julie, we're going to have you all introduce yourself. Let's start with Julie.
Sure.
So tell us.
Julie Booher from Lexington, Kentucky. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Pepperpointe Partnerships, which is a doctor-owned, doctor-controlled, independent DSO. And it's relevant to share with you something I'm really proud of when it comes to our organization. 4 of the 6 C-suite executives are women, 90% of the Pepperpointe team are women, and 50% of our doctor owners are women. That's impressive. Pepperpointe, I lead our business development efforts and have supported the growth as we've gone from 20 offices and 7 doctor partners to 135 offices and more than 100 doctor owners in about 3 years. And we've supported those groups as they've increased on average 30% in profitability.
That's
so
amazing.
Excited to be here.
Congrats.
Yes, thank you.
That's awesome, Julie. Thank you for sharing that. I'm Teresa Williams, and I have been in our industry for quite some time. Like Ellie said,
we're dinosaurs.
Where we almost stopped sharing the years. But I'm the Chief Operations Officer for Dental Express, which is a DSO in San Diego. And I got my start in my career in the heartland in Oklahoma City when Dr. Canna, that you guys saw on the last panel, we got to work together to help grow that organization. And Dental Express and Dental Depot are sister companies there. I also do fractional COO and CFO work consulting from time to time, helping other DSOs in our marketplace, kind of drawing from our experience of things that work really well, our experiences from things that don't work, and loving supporting this industry in every way that we can.
All right, thanks, Teresa. My name is Allison Alexander. I'm a vice president for Darby Group Companies, which is the parent company of Darby Dental Supply. I'm very excited to be here and to share this stage with these incredible women. At Darby, I oversee marketing and branding primarily. I'm also an advisory board member for Women in DSO and chair the mentorship committee. And when I'm not working, I'm an advocate for mental health and volunteer my time to a number of mental health organizations, and am a mom of a 9-year-old and 4.5-year-old twins. So.
Identical, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yes.
Very good. Well, I'm Ellie Naderi. I won't belabor my background because I've been with you for the last couple of hours, but outside of serving as an operating partner in the private equity space, I'm also a partner and CEO of an organization called Oral Health United, where we're focused on digital transformation for the industry. Since Allison shared about her babies, I'm a very proud single mama for the last 13 years of a 16 and 18-year-old about to graduate high school and junior in high school, and great to be here with you.
Oh, thank you. And I got to tell you, Ellie, thank you so much for being such a trooper. I mean, like back to back. I don't know how you do it. I hope you have your water bottle there because...
Very handy.
Very good, yes. Ladies, thank you so much. So something that we all got together and we talked about, you know, what is women in leadership? I mean, we can talk about this for days, right? But there are certain things that led us to that. Let's talk about skills and mindsets, if you will, that paved the way to your leadership. So I'd like to start with Julie. Julie, do you think that there is a specific mindset that will help someone to be successful in the path to leadership?
It's a really interesting question because I think a leader's mindset shapes a company's culture and it spreads throughout the team. And when I think about the leaders who have influenced me the most, it's leaders who have an abundance mindset. They see and believe and share with others that there is enough success, enough reward, enough recognition to go around, and that the seats at the table aren't limited. Instead, we can just make the table bigger. And that attitude, that mindset is so positive. It creates so much security and opportunity for the team. And it allows you to see that they, as a leader, are focused on other people. And they care about other people. They have the ability to think beyond themselves. And we have a wonderful CEO who reminds us often that when you do the right things for the right reasons, good things follow. And I think our ability to adopt his abundant mindset and that philosophy has really contributed to our success significantly.
I think it's a great point because as leaders, we all know that we're the compass to the culture, to the company, right? And that's having to walk your true north and having to do it every day. I mean, it's not as easy as one would think. So Ellie, I'd like to ask you the same question too. You know, do you think that there's a specific mindset?
Absolutely. Well, I have to agree with Julie. I think you're spot on. And there's a multitude of mindsets and characteristics that lead to success. But my personal secret sauce has always been founded in having a positive mindset. Mm-hmm. And I parent the same, I lead the same, and even with girlfriends that I support that are in high power positions with big companies, I never allow myself to walk into a situation preemptively assuming the worst. And one thing I learned in sales is it's human nature that if you get burnt once, you don't want to try it again. Mm-hmm. But the reality is if you walk into a situation already saying, but I've already tried this and it didn't work, and this feels like something else and I'm not going to do it again, well, I can guarantee you that you're going to fail. But if you approach every situation as if it's the first time through newborn eyes and a big smile and a positive outlook, you will succeed. And that truly has been my personal secret for success. In addition to that is not having a limiting belief in situations.
Right. Fear of lack, right?
It's, I've quoted a couple of things this afternoon, but Simon Sinek always says having an infinite mindset is really what gets you there.
Right. Teresa, I know that you've got a great thought about this as well. If you'd like to share that with us.
So I love having those tools in our tool bucket, and I think what you both shared, those are both really important to carry with us every day. I want to talk to some of the emerging leaders that are in the audience here today, and about how intentional you are about approaching the challenges and obstacles in front of you, and how we think about issues and problems. Maybe 6 months ago you were doing treatment coordinating, and now you're a practice manager, or you're looking at potentially running multiple locations. And that can feel overwhelming sometimes, or you may feel like, do I belong at this table? What's going on? And something I did early on is I would think like the next step ahead. Mm-hmm. And early in my career, I thought I wanted to go to dental school. I thought I wanted to be a dentist. And so I would learn everything I could about running a dental practice because I wanted to think like the dentist. What would the dentist want? And then as I navigated my career and became more multi-location, it's, what does the CEO think? How does the CEO approach this issue if they were standing right here? If she or he were in this room, how would they feel about this problem, and what lens would they look at it through? What would the bank say? How would the bank approach this issue when I'm looking at my financial statements? And so I put those hats on now whenever I'm approaching issues or I'm looking at what mindset am I going to be in. Because if you're looking at it from that perspective, you'll be experiencing success in that area of your career.
Correct. You know what? I think in dentistry, before dentistry, I came from the retail world, if you will. Allison and I can talk about that for days. But I remember coming into dentistry and I was thinking like, okay, there's some sort of manual, some training, and there's none. You kind of have to make the rules as you go, but having that mindset of, I remember early on, I was looking at models or people that I wanted to, I wanted to be that person. How do they get to that position? What do they do differently? And you have to have the courage to reach out to that person, male or female, if you will, to say like, hey, I want to learn more. And I remember having to do that through my journey, Allison, I'd like to ask you this question because we've talked about it as well. What skills do you think have played a significant role in becoming an impactful leader? So we talked about having abundance, fear of lack, thinking outside of our box, if you will. From your perspective, what skills do you think played a significant role in being an impactful leader?
Well, I think they're soft skills for sure, right? I think anyone in this room has the technical skills needed to become a leader in their field. And I think the two things that I lean on heavily are communication and authenticity. And I think, from a communication perspective, it's two things. It's assertive communication and being able to say what it is that you mean and what it is that you want in a respectful way. And also persuasive communication, because I think you can't be an effective leader without being able to persuade your team, persuade your peers, persuade potential partners. So I think that's a really important skill, and I think when you look at emerging leaders or some of the younger leaders that we work with, communication is the thing that I see as being the biggest challenge oftentimes. And I think it's our job to teach assertive communication, to model it.
I think assertive is the right word versus aggressive. There's a difference.
Mm-hmm. It's true, and I think people are afraid of the word.
Yes.
And people are afraid of the communication style. And I think you cannot be an effective leader without leaning into communication that is clear and direct. Mm-hmm. It's respectful, it can be kind, and I think you're doing people a disservice by not saying what it is that you mean and what you want. And I think one of the biggest influences in my career is having had a mentor who's now my boss and the president of our company, whom I've known for 20 years, who's made a career of being a great communicator. And I think one of the greatest assets, and advantages I've had in my lifetime is he's very generous with inviting younger members and aspiring members of the team to sit in on challenging conversations and see how it plays out and to hear how it's done. And I think having had that opportunity to learn and to see hundreds of times that the result is positive and not catastrophic, right? I think when we think about assertive communication, our biggest fear is, I'm not gonna be liked, I'm not gonna be respected, this is gonna end poorly, and I think when you do it well, quite the opposite is true. The other thing I think about, the other important skill I think is looking for and seeking out feedback. I think it's one thing to talk about accepting feedback, which is an important skill for anyone, but as we rise through the ranks, feedback is less common, right? There are fewer people in our peer group to give us feedback. It comes less often, and we can become complacent in where we are.
There's an art to feedback, giving feedback, right?
That's true as well.
Yeah.
And I think the feedback that we need to continue to grow as leaders is seeking it out. And it may not be asking your team, do you have feedback for me? Because I think that's not where you're going to get authentic feedback, right?
Right.
It might be watching your team as you're speaking and seeing that 3 members of the team are looking at each other and rolling their eyes, and being willing to be vulnerable and dig into where you might be able to improve.
Yeah, that's so important. One of the resonating books that I've read many moons ago, it was from Patrick Lencioni, who wrote 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, but also there was one book that we read through Leadership Institute. It was the 3 Signs of a Miserable Job. And the biggest thing is what we're talking about is communication and feedback. And I think that for us as leaders, we want our people to grow or do the right things. We got to give them that. And I think you've probably all said this too. This is coming from a good place, because all of us as human beings have that head trash, right, that we deal with day in, day out. And so if we go through it, our team members go through it as well. And so you're right. Communication has to be clear, transparent, genuine.
I agree.
Yep.
Every year, our leadership team sits down and we have really honest, direct conversations with one another. And we have to tell every single member of that leadership team one thing that we want them to stop doing or start doing.
And how do you do that?
It's very hard, but it's the best feedback we get all year, and it helps shape my personal and professional goals for the year, because no one else can give me that direct feedback like they can.
That's a great point.
That's so what it is, that they're supporting you and they're investing in your growth because it's coming from a good place.
Absolutely. It's all about intention.
Right intention. So Teresa, Master Blaster of Operations and all that other great stuff, right? In your journey to leadership, because I know we've had some conversations about this in the past, how do you proactively advocate for yourself in overcoming obstacles? Because many of us have had mentors, luckily. How about yourself? What's your story?
I love that you put those two statements together, that advocating for yourself and overcoming obstacles. Because, when you just look at advocating for yourself in a silo, I think, we look at that as, that's kind of self-serving. How's that going to come across? Of course I want to advance in my career and I want to grow, but, I'm really just here to serve everyone else and all the things that we say. But if you couple it with overcoming obstacles and what I call problem solving, which is what we do in operations, that's when I think the great music really happens. And that's when the things, they start singing in harmony. Because when I work with my teams and I'm advocating for us to solve a problem, and I'm advocating for us to succeed in a certain way, I love the adage that a rising tide lifts all boats. I have found that advocating for what's right for everyone, what's right for the people around me, for my patients, for the providers that I work with, it becomes what's right for me. And I experience personal success, and I have experienced personal success when I come from that perspective.
Yeah.
But if you're just advocating for yourself in a silo, this doesn't work for my schedule, I've got to pick my kids up from daycare by 5:30 and I'm out, you may not be really taking advantage of all the opportunity that's in front of you. So you've really got to look at what's great for the team, what's great for our patients, how do I make that work? And I work with my teams every day on, that seems like a really small issue, but how can we problem solve this together? How can we make this work for our patients, for our providers, and make sure you're there for your kids? Because it's got to work for everyone in order for me to be successful.
Thank you for that. Allison, you and I have somehow a communal, sharing of experiences. We both come from high-end fashion, coming into dentistry. I can tell you stories about how I had to advocate for myself.
It's absolutely true.
And it ain't all rainbows.
What was that?
It ain't all rainbows and unicorns.
It's interesting. I think I told this story when we had met earlier about this conversation, but I think advocating for yourself is sometimes just asking the right people for the things that you want, right? It's, if there's a skill that you're looking to acquire or something or a position that you're looking to move into, it's just having the courage to ask for what you need, whether it's, I don't understand M&A very well. Is there someone that I can work with? And I think as women in particular, we need to be good at asking for and seeking out the help that we need. I think the other thing is, I'm going to go back to communication again and saying what it is that you need. I had told this story previously, but I think it's relevant. When I first came to, dental, I had come from a fashion background. And fashion is 95% women. So the whole, gender issue never came up in my career, and that was 18 years of my career. So my second day in dental, I was a consultant, and I was doing sales training. And two of the executive members of the sales team were sitting in the back of the room goofing off the entire day, both men. And it was distracting to me and to the training class. So my mentor and now boss said to me at the time, go up to them tomorrow morning and tell them, it's distracting, and if you could please knock it off, I would appreciate it. And I thought, I can't say that to these guys. Like, they're more tenured than I am. They know more than I do. But Frank doesn't take no for an answer. So I nervously went over to them and said what I had to say. And I think it changed the dynamic of our relationship with myself and the company.
Yeah.
Simply because I think setting yourself up as someone who is a strong individual, who wants to be seen as an equal, has a profound impact. And I think that's a perfect example of advocating for yourself.
Yeah. I think like for each of us that wanted to sit at the table, not too long ago, I've been coaching a special person, if you will. I can't give you a handbook on how to become X position. I remember being in a position one time and I wanted to learn how to be, like say a director or somebody higher, and there's certain things that I needed to know about. I wanted to be better at profit and loss statements, and anything else with respect to leadership and communication, and really having to be real, because we can talk about communication like, yeah, but what is really that? What is that really? It's really being genuine, and people do want to know. They don't want you hiding behind the scenes. They can tell your genuineness. And is it really coming from a good place? And do you really have, let's just say this, do they trust you? And do you really have their best foot forward at hand, if you will? I'm not sure if I'm articulating right.
And I think, Maria, coupled with genuineness, it's a vulnerability.
Yeah.
It's, we talk about being strong women, being strong leaders, but that vulnerability comes with that, comes right alongside that strength. That to ask for, can you go into that a little bit more with me, like what you're doing in business development, Julie, because that area is new for me. I've got to be vulnerable that I have been in a de novo-based company, not an acquisition-based company. And we've got such great networks that we can learn from each other. I mean, we didn't have ChatGPT 25 years ago. But being vulnerable with each other, I think, is going to accelerate your careers. And we're in a great space, a safe space for that here in the DSO industry.
Yeah, thank you. So Ellie, each person's path to leadership looks very different. Obviously, yours are different from each of ours because you started out in clinical, right? And I would like to know more about your journey, because here you are now. You're CEO, you're in this company, you're on a lot of advisory boards, you're sitting at the table. So how did it all start? What was your mindset when you were there?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I'll start by saying that my career journey has been very intentional. And some of you know this about my personal life, but my mother got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer when I was 14 years old. And my sister had just started dental school, and those were my high school years. And so I kind of lacked direction in that moment in life and was very close to my middle sister, and she encouraged me to go to hygiene school. But I said, I don't really want to work in people's mouths. I don't know that I want to do this. She said, just trust me, do it in the interim, and you can always go back to school and end up doing something that you wanted to do. So I do want to underscore, it was not an accidental transition. But that said, it was a difficult journey. I ended up doing an RP program. My senior year of high school, I started dental assisting, which
It was early.
Very early. I was a dental assistant at 17 and started doing my prerequisites for hygiene school, graduated. And even as a hygiene student, I was always waiting, the creeper at the end of class, waiting to talk to, the Philips Sonicare rep and whomever else was there to learn from them and ask them how they transitioned their career journey. And through that process, I learned that, I don't need to reinvent the wheel, and that I just need to place myself in as many different rooms as possible with as many smart people as possible so that I can learn from them what they had done. And ultimately, I did transition into academia. I worked in a pharmaceutical company, and I still wasn't sure exactly how my career would shake out. But through my tenure working and running DSOs, I really developed a passion for, the business aspect of dentistry. And people often ask me, don't you miss the clinical aspect? And my answer was, well, I'm still involved in the clinical aspect because now I'm able to influence even more patient lives with the work that I'm doing. And the other advantage that I had is I'm the youngest of 3 girls, and my 2 older sisters could not be any more different from one another, opposite spectrums. And so I became a quick study, like, okay, don't do that, do a
Very
little
smart.
bit of this. Exactly. So, just really, again, it goes back to that positive mindset and having an open mind and truly being a sponge. And then deciding for yourself, this is what works for me, stylistically, that doesn't work for me, and learning from other people's mistakes. And to Teresa's point, not being afraid to admit when you make a mistake.
Right.
Yeah, and so, obviously, I'm incredibly grateful, and I can't answer this question without giving credit to, to a lot of people that actually were kind enough to allow me to be in the room with them and to teach me and coach me. But also, a lot of it I do give myself credit to because it took everything I had, when I got punched in the face and told I was doing something wrong or going about it incorrectly to, take a moment, gather myself and regroup myself and look myself in the mirror and say, all right, Ellie, that's the second time you've heard there's got to be some truth to this. Now, what are you going to do to fix it, to advance yourself forward?
It's a very good disciplined mindset too, I would think, because you early on obviously had to grow very quickly and having to learn, through the struggles, if you will, but you've kept it together and kept focus. You kept your eye on the prize. That's what it sounds like as well. Many of us, I was very lucky to have Paul Gill. He's a wing commander, was our vice president at the affiliate I was working at Riverside Dental and Dental Associate offices. I think I've never told this story to anybody, actually. One day he called me in his office because he wanted to talk to me about something, and I felt like, oh my God, what the hell did I do? So I came in there, and he says, Tracy's leaving, and Tracy was the administrator. I go, okay. And we need to replace her. I go, oh, wait, you want me to help you look for somebody? He goes, no. And then it was exactly that. I go, me? And so, and I was afraid because of the fact that the fear of the lack fear, mindset, thinking versus abundance, because at that point in time, I think we were doing 28 million. And I'm thinking, wow, this is a big, huge endeavor. But the fact is that he trusted in me. He knew that I was going to go ahead and fall several times, in fact. But it takes that mindset to pick yourself up and brush yourself and say, okay, you've gone through this already. You need to fix it, change it. Somebody just, I've learned something working in CareStack, which I love. Fail fast. Get up, and let's try something different.
And that is really the toughest part, right? I mean, as human beings, we're all bound to fail. We all make mistakes. But the most difficult part of continuing to stay positive, and I'm not talking about having rose-tinted glasses when I say be positive. Be realistic, but be able to forget about yesterday's punch in the face and show up that day like it's a brand new experience without any judgment or bias and give it your all. And if you still fail, then at least you know that you gave it your all.
Yeah, I think keeping that feeling, if you will, that it's like an anchor to you. So for those of us that have those types of days, you got to figure out how to get it off your shoulders, get it off your chest, if you will, and find it somehow, some way. I mean, there's various resources out there. Allison, we talked about unique influences. Yours is really pretty unique. I know that you talked about Frank. Now we're having a Frank fan club, if Frank's still out there. She talks about you so much, but you know, let us know, because you did come in from high fashion retail, now you're into dental. Totally two different fields. Believe me, from, you know, Calvin Klein to, okay, mouth, teeth.
Very glamorous.
Perio.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think your question is kind of what is that experience? And
Yep.
you know, I think the biggest challenge for me in going from, and I'm sure a number of people in this room have had a similar experience, you know, coming from an outside field. And I think the biggest challenge for me was imposter syndrome, which I think everyone understands well, but also just seeing my background as a negative. You know, when I got to the dental industry, I tried very hard to downplay what I had done previously. I didn't talk about it. When people asked questions about it, I was very vague. Because I didn't see any way that it fit into dental. And I thought it was embarrassing, frankly, right, to say that I came from fashion. It wasn't until after some encouragement that I realized, when I started working in marketing at Darby, that perhaps an outside perspective was good, you know? And I fully just embraced the fact that I hadn't grown up in dental, that I might have something different to offer. That led me to leading Darby's first rebrand in 75 years, which was an enormous amount of fun and wouldn't have happened without the support of Frank and, and my peers. And I think that that's just a testament to authenticity and kind of overcoming that whole imposter syndrome and being willing to just fully embrace who you are, and as Teresa said, being vulnerable and understanding that people may not like where you came from, but there's always something that you can bring to the table that's different.
Right.
I think something that you're not
Go ahead.
giving yourself enough credit for is how hungry you are to continue to learn and hone your craft, and the humility that it takes to come in and ask those hard questions and seek to learn what dental is. I'm sure you spent late nights trying to figure out all of the industry that you could, and that extra effort, going the extra mile, which I'm sure all of us have, I'm sure everyone in this room has, it's required. As you take that next step, it's required in leadership that you remain hungry, that you be a lifelong student, that you are humble enough to admit what you don't know, that you are humble enough to ask really great questions and lean on others, and understand that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
I think it's a great point, and I think just being willing to say, I don't know about this, is key. And, you know, and I think the further along in your career you get, the more difficult it is, I think, for some people to say that. But having those resources and reaching out and saying, this is not my area of expertise, right, I think is a sign of a strong leader, and not a sign of weakness.
And I think people may get to that point where they're like, I don't know about this, that's not me. But then it stops there. And it's those late nights, it is, what are you gonna do to find out? You know, like, that's the differentiator. That's the differentiator between sitting where you're sitting and sitting where you wanna sit.
Right. So true. And Teresa, I'm going to pick on you if you don't mind, because we've had some great conversations before this day, folks. So just to let you know, I know that there were times that we've all talked about where we felt like giving up, throwing in the towel. And I'd like you to share that with our audience, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. You know, I think we can all agree, and we've watched the economic landscape in our industry change so much over the last several years. When we were in the throes of it, in the middle of COVID, our playbooks just weren't working. You know, I mean, we had shutdowns, we had our practices closing. When we were able to close them, employees wouldn't come to work. Normal things, the way that you delivered treatment plans, they weren't hitting. And it came to the point where I thought, well, maybe I'm not what we need here. Maybe this isn't the right industry for me anymore. And I think a lot of us started to ask ourselves those questions. We saw mass exodus of hygienists leaving the industry, dentists putting down the handpiece for the last time.
That was a bleak
retiring.
moment in dentistry. A lot of us have lived through that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I really did have to take a pause and question myself on, is this for me? Should I be doing something else?
Yeah.
And I was able to work through it with my team. I would say I was able to work through it with all of you in this community.
Yeah.
And we came out on the other side, I think, stronger than ever as a DSO community. And I would say it is leaning on your network, reaching out. If you're not in a mastermind group, or you're not getting involved in exchange circles or webinars, or there's so many great resources for you in this industry, and they're free. They aren't necessarily something that you have to do a pay to play. Start your own mastermind. Meet 2 or 3 people here and hop on a call with each other once a month. I think it's that community that got me through it, Maria.
Yeah.
And I would tell all of you, that, Lord willing, we won't see another pandemic situation like that in our careers.
Sure.
But there will be challenges. There will be those days that you're like, the deal didn't close that I worked on for 6 months, that you're going to have to pivot and, lean on your team even outside your company. And I'd say that was huge for me, Maria.
Yeah, I know, and I know that you have a way of working with your team members to see that abundance, mindset, if you will. But how did you do that? Because I was in a DSO. Everybody was leaving left and right, and it was like, I think I had On Diem and another temp agency speed dial on my cell phone. And so how did you get them to believe, to stay, to believe like, we're going to get through this. There's going to be another day. We're going to have the doors open, because there was a lot of people that were thinking of doing something totally different. We all struggled.
There were, I was, terrified. I'm in California, and so for those of you that are from the West Coast, we were the first closed, last to open. And we knew it was coming, I think, a lot sooner than the rest of the country, and we were hearing the whisperings that, we may not get to open our doors even tomorrow. Like, we didn't know if we had hours left. And so I hit the road, and I visited practices, and I met with every single team. And I told them, I said, I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. I don't know what's happening. I said, but I can promise you I'm going to put you back to work sooner
It's a hard
than
message
anyone
to
else.
deliver.
And it was something that I firmly believed and felt very, very convicted about.
Yep.
That I will get you back to work sooner than anyone else in the city. And and that was what we worked to. We went to work right away on just contingencies. If they let us do emergency care, what will we do? How can we afford to pay everyone based on what we make on emergency care? We modeled things out. It was some really late nights. So we stood the practices back up, I think, within about 4 or 5 days. We stood half of our practices up as emergency care only facilities. Employees that weren't comfortable to take care of patients, because we were all there. Some people were like, I'm out. I'm like, but how do I pay them not to take care of patients?
Right.
How do I keep that fire in their belly about it? And so we created socially distant work opportunities in the practices that were closed. And so we surveyed, tell me where you are with this, and letting them know where you are is okay. Wherever you are with this situation, I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about it.
Right.
But, I'm okay with how you feel about it. And so if they wanted a socially distant work opportunity, they might be in Op 12 in a certain clinic writing SOPs. A hygienist might be filing insurance claims, and that's what we did. And the people that wanted to care for patients and that felt comfortable, and we put them in practices providing emergency care.
I think most importantly, I think we need to take note here is that you've established the groundwork of trust, right? And you do as you say. As leaders, people rely on us. And, if you're going to tell me to do this, we got to follow through as leaders, is what I'm trying to say. So laying down the groundwork of trust and following through, I think is very important. Sounds like that's what you've done.
Yeah.
Prior to that.
And it was challenging, because the PPP, we weren't even talking about it yet. We were looking at how are we going to fund this on
Right,
just
right,
revenue.
right.
And so we were able to come in just a little bit in a deficit, but it was tough.
Yeah, people
You know,
want
we were
truth.
opening 3 practices. We had 3 practices under construction at the same time.
My goodness.
And so yeah, that was, I would say, probably the biggest, most keep you up at night challenge that I went through as a leader.
I think all of us didn't sleep.
Not a lot of sleep, a lot of gray hairs there.
Yeah.
But I'm proud of our team. I'm proud of what we went through there. And now I feel really ready for the next big challenge. That we did that. I think I would take care of just about anything.
So thank you. Julie, now I know your experience is different because we've talked about this quite often, and I'm pretty impressed of your past experience. I mean, Cancer Society, multiple sclerosis, excuse me, I can't even speak it right. I mean, that was just amazing. I'm going like, this came out of her, But do you think the experiences of others who took this journey before you, how did it actually influence you?
Yeah, so I come from a healthcare nonprofit background. That was my career until Pepperpointe. And in those organizations, in my entire life, really, I've been surrounded by amazing and successful women. I've had amazing mentors and amazing bosses, both men and women, who valued me, who invested in me, who believed that the sky was the limit for what I could accomplish. And I'm so grateful that that's my story, because I know that that's not everyone's story. And because I feel so blessed by the amazing people I've been surrounded with, I feel a real obligation to be that type of leader, to be that type of example, to empower and encourage as much as I can the next generation and whomever I have the opportunity to surround myself with. I'm just really humbled by all of those individuals who invested in me, people who didn't even realize they were investing in me. And so, life is all about relationships. And as leaders, I think it's our duty and our obligation to invest in one another. I don't think being a leader is a job. I think it's a calling.
Yes,
and
it
I
is.
think it's one that never ends. And so, my charge to you would just be to understand what an amazing responsibility and obligation and opportunity you have to truly transform lives and create a totally different path for so many people. And I'm just honored to be a part of those journeys.
That's wonderful. I think that's something that we all talked about too, is just to note, it doesn't have to be women, it can be male, it can be any gender that could be sitting here and talking about this, but I know that each and every one of you have gone through your own challenges, your own witness, how do you say it, wins, celebrations, but also there's that side that we rarely talk about, because being in the positions that we are, I mean, there's stress, internal, external demands, if you will. I mean, I get some messages sometimes like, you were up till 3 o'clock in the morning? So it's like, it's emails, right? I got smarter. I'm gonna send it out so it goes out at 8 versus 3. So I'm not waking anybody up, right? So, I mean, we all know that internal and external demands, it's pretty tough. There's no rainbow, unicorn, or essential oils that's gonna cure that. I've tried everything. And so I'm gonna ask each and every one of you, do you put a lot of demands on yourself? And how do you find balance? Because I know that we want it all. Ellie.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be respectful of everyone's time on a Saturday afternoon, I'll keep it brief, but it sounds really simple, and anyone that knows me has already laughed at me at least once for this. I'm a sticky pad girl, and I like to make lists and prioritize them and reprioritize them. And oftentimes the laundry is not that high priority on a Monday afternoon, so.
Allison.
I think you hit on something really good there. When things are really challenging and your plate overrunneth, prioritizing is the biggest thing. And I think also recognizing your areas of growth. I tend to, for example, I am completely OCD about PowerPoint presentations. I was working on one while at this conference, and I kept redoing it, and I said to my colleague, you know what, it's good enough, it's done, this is not important, right? And I think it's being able to take a step back and say, I know I want it this way, but that's not the priority right now. So I think prioritizing is probably the most important thing for me.
It's important, especially when you're juggling family and work life. I'm going to say it, there's really not a balance, but I know you've got a better word for that.
I do have a word for it, that if you're looking for balance, you have 100% of you. And if you're balanced, then everyone's just getting 50%. And so I really like to look at it more as a blend. And being your true, authentic self. If it's a calling, Julie, then I'm COO at home, and I'm Teresa, the mother of 2 wonderful young women when I'm at work as well. And having that blend that I can be my true, authentic self in both places, and having a place for my family in my work life, having a place for my work life in my family. It's the only way I knew how to parent, being a working parent, that, it doesn't cut off at 5.
Right.
If you want to learn more and you want to be curious, and your kids don't stop needing you at 8 in the morning. So I think it's about blend and creating space for both in the same spaces.
Thank you for that, because balancing is hard, and
It's impossible.
it is impossible.
And I don't want 50% of you, Maria. I want your whole self.
I know.
I want to work with the whole Maria.
Right.
And, if you think about it, who wants 50-50?
Right. Correct.
You want to be your whole self everywhere.
Yeah. And Julie?
I place a lot of demands on myself. Yes. I think the hardest thing for me is trying to set realistic expectations for myself and
Realistic.
for others.
Realistic is the
And
word.
often that includes resetting those expectations and
Right.
reprioritizing. And none of it would be possible without an amazing support system, a community that I've built, that my husband and I have built together, that makes taking care of our child possible and making our life together possible.
Yeah. So myself, I actually call it a brain dump. For those of you that work with me know what I'm talking about. It's all the stuff that's in your head that, how do you keep track of everything? Well, I do a brain dump every Friday or Sunday as to what needs to be done, what hasn't been done, and then I allocate the time that I know that I can hit that mark, or maybe I may have to allocate the week after. So that's one thing. But going back to family, it's a blend. Because as a working mom myself, my children, my daughter's 32, son's 28, about to be 29, but I did put time aside for dinner. There's games, there's dinner, and then after that, when they're asleep, I'm working. I gotta give that time aside, and they know it too. And I think communication with family is equally important, because they know that if there's planning forecasting that's coming down the pipeline, they may not see a lot of me, but I'm gonna make it up to you in this time, and you have to follow through with that promise.
And where you can make them a part of what's happening. Right. I feel like my daughters grew up with many internships and running a company. And they talk about that, and they talk about how they communicate in their own workplace, because they heard me solving so many issues, employee-related, people issues.
Yeah. They learn from you. They got training
already. You can
already.
teach your children some pretty great lessons.
Right.
Opening and sharing more of yourself with them.
Absolutely.
All right, so as we're coming to a close, I would like each of the panelists, if you can, give our audience your key advice, or a takeaway, if you will, so they can take it back with them, any actionable items, if you will. Would like to share first, Ellie. Yep.
Yeah, so I would say, first of all, and we hit on this before, is do some soul searching, because leadership roles like ours are not necessarily the easiest thing or for everyone. Identify where you want to be in your career. You might be perfectly fine and great where you're at and providing an organization a ton of value. And if that's the case, great, continue to excel in that role. If growth is your aspiration, then the best thing you can do is, hang your hat on the coattail of someone that's been there and that has a frame of reference and is willing to take you under their wing. So,
Allison.
I would say my one takeaway would be to find a great mentor. Make sure that that person is someone who has expertise and skills that you want to learn or need in your career. Be willing and open to learn and gather feedback about yourself and your own performance. And just continue to work on yourself and be honest with yourself. I think that's the most important thing is that we are good judges of our own skills
Character,
and
self-aware.
character.
Self-awareness.
Yeah.
Yep.
And again, I'm going to speak to those of you in these emerging groups. Don't wait for who's in front of you to tell you what's next. They may be counting on you to step up and help them discover what's next. That, it's really cool how quickly some of these companies can grow and they grow really fast and in lots of different directions. So the opportunity, it really is unlimited. But don't wait for the first person in front of you. Have those conversations with the founding doctor, with the person that's right in front of you. Where are we headed? How do I help us get there?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Julie.
I would say be hungry to learn, hungry to show up and be present, ask great questions, humble, and smart about people. I think the amount of time you can dedicate into your emotional intelligence is significantly more important than anything you can learn any other way.
Well, this is awesome. Ladies, thank you so much. These have been great takeaways and advice and wisdom and journey. Let's give everybody, let's give them a hand.